Don't be offended if you want to catch up with me and I don't open my house to you. It's not that I don't like it. When people are in my house, like I don't want to be like a referee to my guests. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, don't do that, don't touch that, don't do that, don't do that. Like I end up not enjoying that. This moment she came to my house, like ever since then, things just changed because I kind of lost respect for that because I felt like she didn't respect my space. She didn't respect my home. She came in. Hello everyone, my name is Kudzie Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. Today I'm going to be talking about visitor etiquette. This is one of my pet peeves, like visitors who don't have the proper etiquette. And when it comes to visitors, most of the lessons that I've learned have been about me and my personality and how I like to treat people, how I like to treat my space. So just going a bit back, I remember when I was young, when I was very young, my mom took me and my sister to visit one of her friends who had just had a baby. And my sister and I, were very excited, and we used to have this thing that we liked going to other people's houses because we liked, having snacks. You know how people are in Zimbabwe where whenever a visitor comes into your house, like they always offer you like drink, snacks and all that. So as kids, that's what we would look forward to, especially if we knew that, there's nothing for us, like it's an adult visit, but at least we get snacks out of it. So my mom took us to her friend's house, and I remember her friend made these like very nice sandwiches, and my sister and I, we were so excited about this food. And when it was put in front of us, like it was a plate full of sandwiches, and my sister and I kept going to reach, for more sandwiches and more sandwiches. And my mom couldn't tell us like loudly that, hey guys, stop. So she was talking to her friend, and she was trying to do things like to make us stop having more. And I remember at one time she actually put her hand in front of me and my sister, and we put our hands over her hand so we could keep reaching for those sandwiches. Up until the point she kicked me, and I was like, why are you kicking me? Because I didn't get the signal that, hey, this is a bit rude, like you keep taking the sandwiches, just have enough and leave for other people. So I've always grown up knowing that there is some kind of visitor etiquette. And of course, after that visit, we got the lecture of our lives about the behavior that we had. And also other things like, when we'd go to people's houses, my mother would always make sure that, she tells us to clean up and to help clean up. And sometimes as kids, after having a meal, you just want to sit down and watch TV, what other kids are doing sometimes. But my mom would always tell us, when you go to other people's houses, always make sure that you clean up and you leave the place tidy. And I've always done that throughout my life. So coming to Australia, I have had I of course, that was the first time I had my own house. So where I could invite people, and, just as part of my personality, I like to open my heart to everyone. And if you've been on this channel, I have shared about this before. This is something that I am actively still working on, just to have a bit of control over how I just open my heart to people and believe the best of everybody. So here in Australia, I used to invite different people to my house. Like if someone says, oh, let's catch up, the place that I would always suggest is, oh, come over to my house. I'll cook a meal, we'll hang out, we'll watch something. I would always invite people over to my house, because for me, that was like a demonstration of love. That's how I showed that, I love people. Even the people around me will tell you that for me to show you that I love you. I cater to you. Like, I literally want to cook for you. I don't want you to do a thing. I want to cook for you and just treat you, pamper you while you're in my house. So that's the kind of person, that's the kind of friend that I am. So I used to like open my house to so many people. And I remember there's a lady who used to live in this neighborhood close to my house, and you know, she we got talking sometime, and she said, you know, let's hang out. And of course I said, oh, you can come over to my house. And she came over to my house, and she had 2 young kids. And I tell you, that just changed how I looked at inviting people to my house. She had these 2 young children, and you know, I liked this lady a lot outside of my house. The moment she came to my house, like ever since then, things just changed, because I kind of lost respect for that, because I felt like she didn't respect my space. She didn't respect my home. She came into my house with her children, and as always, like, you know, I catered to them, I treated them, cooked for them, you know, just make sure that, you know, they're fed, they've got drinks, and we had a chat. And you know, and I didn't enjoy that visit at all, because her 2 young kids were misbehaving in my house. Like, they were just doing the most. And I understand kids' behaviors. I have 2 young kids myself, so I understand how kids can get when they visit other people's houses. And sometimes kids can even act out of character when they visit other people's houses. But I always believe that, you know, as a parent, you know, if you're visiting other people's houses, it's your responsibility to control your kids, and it's your responsibility to call them out and to discipline them. It shouldn't be left to the person who's hosting you to now step in and start, you know, reprimanding your kids. That is, you know, that is not a very good way to do things. So this lady's kids, I remember, were sitting on the couch, and her kids started like jumping up and down on the couch, like flipping over on the couch, and they were sitting with their shoes on the couch, and which in my household, like, that is not allowed. I don't allow my kids to sit with shoes and put shoes on the couch, and you know, things like that. And I remember at one point she actually said to, you know, the older child that, you know, go and show yourself around auntie's house, like show yourself around. And this child just started like going up and down my house, opening different doors, like going into different rooms, and I had to like literally follow them, because they were young, they were quite young, and I've got things in some rooms that, you know, are fragile, they can break, and I didn't know this child. And from the way they were behaving on the couch, I'm like, I don't know if they might break something. So I had to follow them around, and me and this lady actually didn't end up engaging in like really good conversation, because the whole time I was just watching her kids and making sure they're not destroying my house. So, you know, it just taught me that I need to have better boundaries when it comes to my friends and when it comes to inviting people to my house. It's one thing to expect people to behave a certain way, but at the end of the day, people will behave how they're used to behaving. People will behave whichever way suits them, and sometimes that doesn't always work for you. So what I do now is I have very few people who are allowed in my space, as in my house, and it is only the closest of friends who actually enter my door. And whenever I want to hang out with someone, I no longer say, oh, come to my house. No, I say, let's meet somewhere. Let's go for lunch. Let's go for coffee. Let's meet in a neutral place that is not your house. It's not my house. It's somewhere where we can just go there, have a good time, and go to our houses, because it saves me like being annoyed in my space, and it saves me like disciplining other people's kids and putting me in a very uncomfortable position. And when people are in my house, like I don't want to be like a referee to my guests. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, don't do that, don't touch that, don't do that, don't do that. Like, I end up not enjoying that visit. So, you know, that is like a lesson that also involves boundaries for myself. It taught me how to set healthy boundaries when it comes to people. At one point, I remember thinking like, oh, now I can't hang out with people because I get annoyed sometimes when I meet up with people in my house and I'm not familiar with them. I'm not familiar with how the kids behave, so that means I can't hang out with people. I'm like, no, you can hang out with people, just find other ways to hang out with people. And I have found that with my friendships, with my acquaintances, with my connections, the more we meet outside of my personal space, the better I am in those relationships, because I am more relaxed. I'm not being hyper vigilant about people destroying my property, because one thing about me, I like keeping my space very clean and tidy, and I am someone who is affected by different energies. So if my house is untidy, like I feel very disorganized in my brain. So I literally need to just clean up in order for me to feel calm and relaxed. So when I have people in my house that are throwing things around and behaving whatever way, I actually don't feel relaxed. I'm very edgy. I'm not enjoying the visit. I'm just hyper vigilant. I'm watching for things. I'm watching what are they doing, where are they going, what are they touching, and all that. Are their hands clean? And all that kind of stuff. So, it was a lesson on understanding what works for me, understanding how to relate to people, because I think the way that I had been raised, we always used to invite people to our house and we would visit people at their house. And I remember, like, just at my house, my parents weren't a fan of, they didn't like visiting people a lot, but we used to get a lot of visitors. And I normalized that that is how you connect with people. You open up your home and you bring them into your house. And so because that was like my subconscious programming, when I had my house, I'm like, oh, this is how you connect with people. You open up your house and you let them in your house and you connect that way. But I learned that, I can only open up my house to like literally no less than like 4 to 5 families max. Like, because that's how I know those families. I know how they behave. I know they respect my space, and I know that they will watch their kids. They will discipline their kids. They will tell their kids, don't do this, don't do that. They won't leave it up to me as guests. And they're people who respect the cleanliness of my space. So they will always clean up after themselves, and they will, always be helpful in cleaning up after, whether we're eating food or whatever. They're people who understand who I am and how I function and how I respect my space. And in return, I do the same when I go into their spaces and in their homes, and I respect their property. So, that is just a lesson that, I feel everyone should learn when they're interacting with people. It's okay not to open your doors to everybody. It's okay to have a select few people that you allow in your house, because you know that they know you and they respect your space. Not opening up your doors to people does not mean you're not a good person, you're not a good friend. It just means that you know how you work. You know the things that annoy you, and you would rather not go there, and you would rather focus on actually connecting with people and enjoying that connection. And sometimes that is outside of your own personal space. So in Australia especially, I feel like there are so many different areas that people can go and hang out. Like some of my favorite places to go with friends, like even friends that I allow in my house, like sometimes we like connecting outside of the house as well. Like I always like going to coffee with people, lunch, even going to a park, going for a walk, and you're walking and you're just chatting to someone. It's a good way of really connecting. And another thing about me is I like to have deep conversations with people. I like to have deep, meaningful conversations with people. So when I find that I'm distracted by behaviors that I'm not liking that are happening in my house from people that I don't know that well, like I find I don't have those deep, meaningful conversations I want to have, because I'm focusing on other things and my mind is distracted by what's going on in my space. So I really like to take people outside of my house sometimes, so I can really have meaningful conversations. So that's something that I wanted to share about a life lesson that I've learned. And it's also about getting to know yourself and knowing what works for you. So don't be offended. If you want to catch up with me and I don't open my house to you, it's not that I don't like you. It's not that, you know, I don't think you're a good person or I don't want you in my house. It's just literally, I understand how I work, the person that I am. I understand my distractions. I understand what annoys me. And I'm someone who also loves to spend a lot of time at home. I am a homebody. I'm at home most of the time. Like, I'm not an outdoors person. So my house is very sacred to me. I'm always there. I do everything in my house. I relax in my house. When I want to have fun, I'm in my house. Like, I'm in my house most of the time. So I really need to be protective of my space. So yeah, that's, you know, a life lesson that I've learned about myself, about, you know, respecting my own boundaries, understanding my boundaries, reinforcing my boundaries, and finding alternative ways to connect with people so that I can still nurture and maintain the connections, the friendships that I have, and still have, you know, that happiness in that aspect. Yeah, so that's all from me, guys. I will see you in the next video.